Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this video, my hair's a hot mess. When is it not? So this video is actually going to be on my breastfeeding journey. I did want to go ahead and make this video for anybody who was like me and wanted to transition from bottle feeding to breastfeeding their baby. And I just want to let you know that if you don't have the opportunity, or if for whatever reason you didn't start to breastfeed as soon as baby was born and you did put them on a bottle or you did give them a pacifier, it is possible for them to learn to relatch, and who knows, it might be a lot easier than you think, like it was for me. And I think it's definitely worth a shot and worth the invested time if breastfeeding is something that you really want to do. So a little bit on my story of why we started to bottle feed in the first place. So Iris was born at 37 weeks and 4 days, so she was still pretty small when she was born. Her first feeding of, right when she was born, her first feeding while we were doing skin to skin was great. And while I was in the hospital, I was attempting to breastfeed her as much as I could. I was putting her on every 2 to 3 hours. She would suck, and my nipples did feel really sore, and they did begin to crack, and they did begin to bleed. I did see a lactation consultant at the hospital. She told me that her latch was good, that she saw her swallowing, so that everything was fine, and that my nipples were probably just getting used to being sucked on for so long. But it got to a point that it got so painful I physically could not. So my baby was born on Friday. We were released on Sunday, and by Monday morning I had to give her formula because at that point my nipples were just so cracked, so raw, so sore that they literally, just the air touching them burned. So I couldn't have her feeding on them. It was just way too painful. And just the thought of her wanting to eat made me want to cry, and I hated feeling like that. And it was also a lot for me emotionally because I did not want to give her formula. My biggest thing was, I'm going to breastfeed, I'm going to breastfeed, I'm going to breastfeed, and I don't want to give her formula because, breast is best, and if I have the milk, I want her to drink that. So it got to a point where I was just so exhausted from just giving birth. I was recovering from a C-section. My nipples were in so much pain that I gave in, and we ended up giving her formula that day. And we also had our first pediatric appointment for that day. So we went to the hospital. So we went to her doctor's appointment, and at that appointment she was weighing 5 pounds 5 ounces. So she dropped 0.7 ounces, which the doctor wasn't too worried about because she was about 4 days old and she hadn't lost even 10% of her body weight yet, but she did want to make sure that she started gaining soon. So she scheduled a date for 2 days later to have her come back and have her weighed in again. So she wanted to make sure that she was eating with the supplementation, and that she was getting enough milk, and that she was growing, because I did tell her my struggles with breastfeeding. So 2 days later we went back in, and she was up to 5 pounds 10 ounces. At that point I was already giving her breast milk, but in a bottle. So my milk ended up coming in on Monday night, because once I started supplementing, I told myself, well, okay, if she's going to take the bottle, then she's still going to have breast milk. I'm not going to give up on that. And I started pumping. I didn't even know whether or not I had milk. The first time I pumped, it was in the afternoon. Nothing came out. And then later on that evening, I pumped again, and that is when I started getting some milk. So my milk came in that Monday night, and at first I was only making about 1.5 ounces, half an ounce to 1.5 ounces. Both breasts combined. So what I was doing was I was pumping every 3 hours, first of all, because I wanted to kind of trick my body into thinking that I was breastfeeding. So I was pumping as much as she would normally be eating. And what I would do is give her the breast milk first, let her drink however many ounces of that I had, and then I would supplement the rest with formula, since she was only drinking about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces at that time per feeding. And then by the end of that week, we were no longer giving her formula, I was solely giving her breast milk. Even though it was bottle, I was solely giving her breast milk because I had enough. So by the next week, I was still pumping, exclusively pumping every 3 hours and feeding her every 3 hours. And by that point, I was making about 2 ounces per breast every session, which was a little bit more than she was drinking because she was only drinking 2 ounces. But if each breast was making 2 ounces, I definitely had about double the supply I needed, and I started storing them. And basically I got up to 1 month, and at her I got up to, I want to say by the 3rd week, I decided that I really wanted to start breastfeeding again, because I never stopped wanting to breastfeed. I just kind of told myself, like, okay, well, maybe I'll pump for as long as I can, and I'll have milk stored. If I keep it up, I'll have enough milk stored that, it shouldn't be a problem. Things change. We are actually moving sooner than expected, and basically I don't know what I'm going to do with all of that frozen milk right now. So I decided to get back to breastfeeding. We set up an appointment for the lactation consultant, and by 3 weeks we were in to see her. It was 3, almost 4 weeks. And at that point, we did find out that she had developed thrush, which really sucked because her breastfeeding, she did pass it on to me, even though we were treating her. So if you guys don't know what thrush is, it's basically a bacterial infection. It's kind of like a yeast infection, but in the mouth. And so baby had it in her mouth, and she passed it to me. And I had it on my nipple, and I think I even had a deeper infection in my breast because for a long time it was very, very painful. So aside from just starting to breastfeed, which can be painful and uncomfortable in and of itself, we had to deal with the thrush. So eventually we did, though. We got through it. And now I want to tell you guys how I actually got into breastfeeding. So at about 3.5 weeks, almost 4 weeks, I decided, you know what, I am just going to, since I stay home with her, I am just going to take the whole entire day to breastfeed and pump if I have to. And I'm not going to give her a bottle until the evening. I really want her to learn to latch back onto the breast. Mind you, by this time, she had already been drinking from a bottle, and she had her pacifier. We would give it to her every so often, which they say don't introduce a bottle and don't give baby a pacifier until at least a month into breastfeeding so that they can have an established latch. So we did things a little bit backwards, but nonetheless, we decided that we were going to go ahead and just do it. So I had looked up a million videos on YouTube on how to get a proper latch. I had looked up a million videos on YouTube on how to get a proper latch, how to get baby, how to get, a deep enough latch and all of that. Because when she first started, we were still having issues with her latch. It still was not perfect. I mean, the lactation consultant, I don't know about you, but whenever I would go to see the lactation consultant, in the lactation consultant's office, she would get a perfect latch. The second I got home, I tried to use the same exact technique, and it just was not working. Like, I don't know, sometimes she would get it, but most of the time she wouldn't. So it was just really rough. I was watching a ton of different videos, trying a ton of different things every feeding. And by the second day, I think I had found a video that finally worked. So the first day wasn't horrible, but it wasn't that comfortable, and it was still kind of painful. So I found a video that kind of just encouraged baby-led latching or baby-led breastfeeding, which is basically where you do what the title says. You let baby lead. So instead of trying to force your nipple into their mouth, you basically let them find the nipple themselves and latch on themselves. And that's exactly what I did. I laid back on my couch. I have like a sectional. So I laid on the sectional part of the couch with, my back. I wasn't laying down completely, kind of just leaned back. And I put her on my chest in the middle of my breast. I let her sniff around and kind of just choose a breast and let her latch on herself. And that first latch was perfect. She got it deep enough. It was not painful at all. When she started sucking, all I felt was a little bit of tugging, and but it was virtually no pain. So I was like, wow, this is amazing, this is how it's supposed to be. And basically I just kept on with that technique. Whether I was leaning back or sitting up, I would kind of just let her find the nipple herself and latch on herself, and that's what's been working. Has she had the perfect latch every single time? Absolutely not. Has she gotten a little bit frustrated sometimes? Yes. In the beginning, I would always have a bottle prepared just in case. If she was really hungry and she was having trouble latching on, what I would do is maybe give her about like half an ounce to an ounce from the bottle. That way she could kind of calm down a little bit, and then try to reattach her to the breast, just so that she wouldn't be so fussy and so anxious to eat. So that was something that I did do in the beginning, but by the 3rd day I didn't have to do it anymore. And at 7 weeks, I can proudly say that we are exclusively breastfeeding again. I do not give her a bottle. I was giving her a bottle in the evenings for the first 2 weeks that we were exclusively breastfeeding, because I thought that that would be easier, but I found that she was still waking up every 2 hours in the night, and I found that it was longer feeding her with the bottle, because I guess she got so used to feeding on the breast that when I would feed her with the bottle, maybe it was just the nipple, the flow was too fast, I don't know, but she would just start choking, and it would just, you know, it would take her a longer time. It would be a lot messier and a lot longer to feed with the bottle, especially in the middle of the night, than it was to feed her on the breast. So I just let go of the bottle completely, and I'm actually no longer pumping at the moment. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, the main reason is because we are moving, and right now I have a current supply in the freezer that I don't know what I'm gonna do with. But yeah, once we do move to our new place and I have place to freeze our the milk, then I will continue to pump at least 3 to 4 times a day, which is my plan, and build up that supply and have it in the fridge or in the freezer. But yeah, so right now her current schedule at 7 weeks, it has changed throughout the weeks, and I don't know if you guys have really fussy and really like vocal babies, but when she sleeps, she is so loud. Like, she makes these grunts and all of this stuff that I run in there thinking that she's awake, and no, she's sleeping. So I don't know, comment down below or like this video if your baby does that, because it's kind of annoying. But yeah, so her current schedule, she is 7 weeks, and she is currently feeding. She's like a cluster feed all day. It is exhausting, but I do know that it's normal, so I am just letting her do it. I am exclusively breastfeeding, so I'm breastfeeding on demand. Whenever she wants to eat is whenever she gets to eat, and I know that that's good for me, that's good for her, it's good for my supply, so I'm not complaining. But it can be exhausting, because right now she's in a place where she's feeding basically every hour to every 2 hours. And even in the middle of the night, well, during the day it's mainly every hour, and at night it's every 2 hours. So she'll usually cluster feed starting around 6 p.m. every hour up until 10 or 11. Once she falls asleep, usually she'll get in about 2 hours before she wakes up, and during the night it's every 2 hours. So let's say she falls asleep around 11, she'll be up to feed around 1, 3, 5, 7, and then around 9 o'clock when she gets up again, she'll be on every hour. And then sometimes she'll go every 2 hours after about 11, so she'll feed like at 9, 10, and 11. And then sometimes after 11 it'll be every 2, so then she'll feed again like at 1, around 3, around 5. Or some days like today, she just wants to feed every single hour. So since she's woken up this morning at 8 in the morning, she has been on the breast every single hour, and it's currently almost 4 in the afternoon. So it's been exhausting, but what am I gonna do? I chose this life, I chose this option, so I'm not complaining. And the most important thing is that she's growing. So at her 1 month appointment, I did tell my doctor that we were exclusively breastfeeding. At that point, I had been exclusively breastfeeding for about 3 weeks. And when we went to her 1 month, she was actually almost 6 weeks. So she was about 5.5 weeks, because at her 1 month, it had to be rescheduled due to the hurricane. I do live in Florida, so that was that whole thing. But at 5.5 weeks, she was weighing 8.5 pounds, which is great because, like I said, she was born at about 5 pounds, 12 ounces. So I'm hoping that by her 2-month mark, she will be basically almost double her weight, which is amazing. She has more than enough wet diapers throughout the day, and she's kind of pooping after every feeding, if not every 2 feedings. So that's really good. And I do want to mention this trick that I would use to kind of just, if you're like me, sometimes you can get a little bit insecure. And even though she was having enough wet diapers, I kind of just wanted to feel, for my own sake, like I liked seeing the number on the scale change. So even though she was having enough wet diapers, even though she grew out of her preemie clothes and was wearing newborn, and now she's growing out of her newborn clothes and is going to be ready for 0 to 3 months soon, I just like to see the number on the scale. That's just me. That's my personality. That's what gives me a little bit more confidence. So what I would do is I would carry her, weigh myself, and then put her down and weigh myself again. Since I don't have a baby scale, I only have a traditional scale, so a digital scale. But that's what I would do, and every single time it would show the numbers going up. So I did see when she was like, when she reached the 6 pound mark, the 7 pound mark, and even when she got to the 8 pound mark, I was like, oh, is this accurate? Like, I'm not too sure. But then at the doctor's office, when she confirmed that she was 8 pounds, 8.5 pounds, I was like, okay, yeah, so the scale the method that I've been using is pretty accurate. So yeah. So that's kind of it for my breastfeeding journey so far. Again, I did have to start off with a bottle. I did have to start off with formula. Once my milk came in, I started supplementing the formula with breast milk. And at the 3-week mark, almost 1 month in, we decided to start exclusively breastfeeding. So even after she had been introduced to a bottle, even after she had been introduced to a pacifier, she did learn to relatch, and now she won't even take the bottle unless she really has to. And it's been an amazing experience. I hope that this video gave you some sort of insight, or maybe some confidence in wanting to try to exclusively breastfeed your baby if it's something that you've been wanting to do even after they've been on the bottle. I think even at 2 to 3 months, the baby can still learn to relatch. Don't doubt yourself, don't doubt your baby. Trust them, trust in their instincts, trust in that they know what they're doing, and you as a mother, you know what you're doing, and you know what's best for your baby. So if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.